As the 10th National Assembly is now fully in place and set to resume plenary on Tuesday, stakeholders are now moving to set the agenda for the lawmakers. Their demands for the National Assembly are to support the war against corruption, hold the anti-graft agencies to account, and bring anyone in the past or present regimes, irrespective of their stations or party affiliations, to account for the ways that they handled public finances when necessary. They also call for zero tolerance to the Muhammadu Buhari appointee's habit of ignoring National Assembly summons. According to them, the 10th National Assembly must stand with the people, ensuring that the constitutional rights are upheld in every part of the country. Joining us now for a conversation is the former House of Representatives member, Eseme Eyibo. He'll be speaking on the setting of the legislative agenda for the 10th National Assembly ahead of the resumption and what should be the priority of the National Assembly ahead of tomorrow's plenary. Welcome to Newsday. Thank you for joining us this afternoon.
I'm quite pleased this afternoon to be with you again. Thank you very much.
All right. So as we said in the intro, tomorrow is the first day of plenary. In your opinion, what should be at the very top of the priority list for our National Assembly members?
Well, you know, the National Assembly have already demonstrated commitment to the sovereignty of the Nigerian people the very day that they were inaugurated and its leadership emerged. They demonstrated that by showing strength in the diversity, by agreeing to work together regardless of the very contentious issues that threw up amongst them as a build-up to the election of the principal officer. So immediately after that, they have demonstrated that commitment by agreeing to work together, and indeed they have been working together for the first time, from my experience, that the National Assembly is on vacation. A majority of the people, especially the senators, are still in Abuja, you know, working together, talking together, having meetings, not meetings on the political primordials, but meetings on how to rebuild the National Assembly. And I have a true knowledge of the fact that they have already set up a legislative agenda premised on very strong and robust oversight and the issue of legislation and, of course, doing all what would be necessary to promote and preserve the integrity of the institution.
Well, thank you very much for that. In the 9th Assembly, we saw a number of probes, that were never followed to a logical conclusion or that their findings were never made public or implemented. Now we have some people calling, for a probe of anti-graft agencies and even some appointees of the past administration to account for how they spent public money. How optimistic are you that we can have something like that in the 10th National Assembly, where there will be a probe of the past administration, findings will be made public, and action will be taken afterwards?
When you use the word probe, that sounds vindictive. Within the purview of legislative duties, there is nothing like probe. It sounds vindictive. What we have within the powers of the legislature is the issue of oversight. And in the course of the oversight, maybe money was appropriated for a particular project or a particular project supposed to be done within a particular cycle, and that is not done. The outcome of a very strong and robust oversight will raise the need for the House or the Senate, National Assembly in this case, to be able to set up a committee to find out what went wrong and now begin to look at remedial measures to redress a couple of those weaknesses. So it has nothing to do with probe. And as a matter of fact, I can tell you, as well as I would like to inform you, that the issue of past probes is not every probe, in your own words, is not every oversight or is not every investigative responsibilities of the parliament that is being taken to the Wuse market or Alaba market. in every investigation, if a particular committee is mandated by the legislature to go into the investigation of a particular disruption, disruption in governance practice, there is what is called the need to know. If the outcome of that oversight responsibility is meant for the executive action or a legislative action, it will be followed in that direction. But you cannot, as a legislature now go and an oversight of a particular ministry, agency, or department of government. The outcome of that will have to go through a legislative process. And when that is done, there is an executive that has a responsibility to implement what the legislature has done. So it is a process and a procedure-driven process. It's not something that you will just come out of it and now take it to the public. It has to go through. It's process-driven, and there's a procedure for it.
All right, and still speaking on procedures, there is a large amount of new members within the National Assembly, this 10th Assembly, and with the reputation of the past National Assembly as being a rubber stamp, what are your opinions and suggestions and hopes? Do you feel as though it would be business as usual, or will these new members be bringing fresh blood to these processes and putting up more of a challenge to some of the bills that come their way?
At some point, the issue of new members would not become an issue because there are still some old members who are left behind, senators and members of the House of Reps. And the new members will have to learn. And in learning, they will first and foremost understand the parliamentary practice and the agenda, the legislative agenda of that particular session. That said, when you talk, I heard you mentioning one word which have, of course, become very popular now in the public domain, the word called rubber stamp and all of that. It's not a function of that. There's nothing like rubber stamping. For example, now, Mr. President has been able to set the ground running. If, for example, there is the issue of floating of the naira, unification of the dual exchange rate, that has resulted, has taken away so many things. The issue of round tripping. There is no more round tripping. There were people who were living in one of the, I know somebody who was living in one of the seven-star hotels in Abuja here. He has been living there for the past 10 years. He just packed out last week because of this unification of dual exchange rate. That is because most people will go to central bank and collect the money and then use this money that they want to import. And they're not importing anything. They're not going to anywhere. They only round trip and take that money to the black market. You know, they do all of that consistently to the detriment of the development of this country. With the measure the presidents have taken now, it's left for the legislature now to now begin to look at the subsisting laws, the laws concerning the Central Bank of Nigeria. Central Bank cannot continue to remain the way it is without being restructured by way of law, by way of reform, to meet the existential reality of today. I recall when there was a liquidity crisis in this country in January, February, everybody was running helter-skelter. The money was available with POS and all of that. People were asking questions. At point, you have two designs of one currency, two designs. These confusions were manifest as a result of weak institution. So it behoves the National Assembly to be able to, as a law-making body, to be able to either through its oversight or through the primary responsibility of legislation, to now begin to look at the Central Bank Act. There was a time SSS, the Department of State Services, attempted to arrest the former CBN governor, Emefiele. And the roofs were shaking, that if you arrest him, there will be financial crisis and all of that. But nobody wanted to really know what went on. A lot of issues went on. People import fuel with subsidy, and they are paid. They bring that fuel from the mother batch, and then take it back to the neighboring country to go and wait in the high sea, and bring that same fuel again to come and supply. round-tripping. So we need a National Assembly now that will be able to complement the efforts of the president. The president has set the ball rolling by setting out reforms. Those reforms require a legislative agenda with legal framework to be able to rebuild the institution and show a direction where we should go as a nation. So the new members have a responsibility to work together with the old members. I am aware of the political, religious, and of course, ethnic orientation of most of our people. But those orientations should exist within the province of the law, but not doing it anyhow. You and I are also aware that the national anthem of this country, from the first stanza, progressively is preaching on the issue of unity, progress, and of course, the strength of this country. And that can be found with the collaboration, understanding, harmonization of objective of the National Assembly. So this particular National Assembly, under the leadership of Senator Godswill Akpabio, I think they are ready, willing, able, and they have sufficient capacity to be able to rescue us from where we are. And the issue of rubber stamping, if the president has done what he is doing, which everybody is applauding it, and the legislature on its own is collaboratively buying into that reform, you can't call that rubber stamping. That cannot be rubber stamping. Rubber stamping, of course, is where you have the existence of incapable and people who are deficient in capacity and pedigree to manage the office or manage a responsibility. You can now talk about the issue of rubber stamping with someone else. From someone else's assistance, then that is able to be achieved, and you now call that rubber stamping. But in this case, this is a departure from the context of what is popularly said. So the National Assembly now, under the watch of the current Senate President, has capacity, has the willingness, and they have harmonization of purpose to be able to drive, and give us productive legislative derivatives.
Now, if you say rubber stamping is not correct, what about civilian dictatorship? Some people are worried, that considering the manner in which the leadership of the 10th National Assembly emerged, this administration has totally captured governance. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, this is a perception issue, and I won't allow this perception to go without, attempting to correct it. It's generally perceived that the executive, the Nigerian presidency, as a matter of fact, is one of the most powerful in the world. That's a perception. But a dictatorship in governance, it depends the context is being used. But the word dictatorship is, as a matter of fact, very generic. Generic to the extent that you can apply it within the context that you may wish to. But if I'll give you an example of what you call dictatorship. Now, the president comes in and is aware that the rich are benefiting from fuel subsidy more than the poor. 30 poor people are inside 30-seater bus, and the fuel consumption is 50 liters for 1 week. So you have 300 poor people using that bus, consuming fuel of 50 liters to go from Abuja to Kubwa, from Kubwa back to Abuja every day. But a particular rich man is staying, he has the money to stay in the 10th floor of one of the biggest hotels here in Abuja. And the car he's driving, he's consuming 105 liters of fuel within 2 days. And the government is subsidizing. So you know that the man who is consuming 100 liters of fuel within 2 days is a man who benefits from subsidy more than the other 300 people, 30 go, 30 back for 5 days. So what I'm trying to say is that for the president to come up the first day of his inauguration, he picks that courage, he picks that determination, he had that foresight, he proactively said subsidy is gone. Somebody will look at that as being dictatorial, that he ought to have taken it to the National Assembly, he ought to have done this, he ought to have done that. So for the interest of the people, law has its own limitation. There is morality in law. There's morality in law to the extent that when it is against public interest, we must be decided in favor of the public interest. Otherwise, every man is entitled to the right to life. And somebody now decides to murder the other person and is being sentenced to death and is executed, regardless of the fact that he is entitled to the right to life. That is to mean that public interest is uppermost. That the morality of public interest is uppermost in the reasoning and the thinking of governance. So when you talk about dictatorship, it is a perception matter which have to be managed through public education and advocacy, so that as much as government is performing, the government should also take steps in informing the public, because the misunderstanding of the performance of government or the intention of government, in most cases, may alter the totality and the opinion of the people.
And you're right, the National Assembly could do with some perception management. With this perception issue, how can they work to better look like there is balance and more coordination between the legislative and the executive arms for this 10th National Assembly?
I've already said here that the political, religious, and ethnic orientation, our respective political and ethnic orientation, should only exist within the province of the law. So, and we should all be very conscious of our national anthem. We've all agreed, you and I, we pledge our loyalty, we sing it, we do all these things. So progressively, that is an emphasis. It is a strong emphasis in our unity. It is a strong emphasis in our progress. So I expect the National Assembly, especially the Senate, to take advantage of the robust leadership it has, the level of transparency, the level of credibility, and all that, which threw up its leadership. They should take advantage of that to rebuild a National Assembly that will give back confidence, acceptability, and legitimacy to the Nigerian people. And that will be done through galvanizing of their various potentials, their various strengths, putting it together, and of course, that will be reflected in their primary responsibilities. Without necessarily, they cannot operate without having at the back of their minds the issue of the separation of powers and checks and balances. The checks and balances can be met, can be achieved through the issue of oversight. And when once that is done, that everything must be done within the prism of the provisions of the law. When that is done, then they are good. And the executive must also respect one fact, that there is a legislature. There is a legislature who constitutionally are bound by certain responsibilities conferred on it by the Constitution. The issue of when the legislature invites the executive to come for certain explanation, buying in, that is their responsibility, and they refuse to appear. It becomes very embarrassing. It declares a state of tyranny. And this tyranny has never been helpful to any government, to any set of people, anywhere. So there should be a mutual respect between the executive and the legislature. And the legislature cannot begin to undertake, delinquent attitude or delinquent activism in the name of oversight. That should not happen. We should rather encourage that there should be boundaries. And the boundaries should be by the prescriptions of the law. And the prescriptions of the law are very clear. To every man his own due. What is the due of the legislature, and what is the due of the judiciary, what is the due of the executive, and what is the due of the people? When it's done that way, it will now re-echo, it will resonate, with a very beautiful symphony that the Nigerian people will be able to enjoy as a derivative of democracy.
Now, earlier you noted that President Bola Tinubu has taken a lot of bold decisions. That's quite true. Those decisions are expected to benefit Nigerians in the future, but presently it is causing a lot of hardship. For instance, the fuel subsidy removal. So I'm wondering if this couldn't have been done in a more sensitive manner, especially when you consider how the APC and its supporters mobilized Nigerians in 2012 to resist then-President Goodluck Jonathan's attempt to remove fuel subsidy. What happened to the sympathy and the empathy that APC used to show towards Nigerians at that time? What has changed between then and now?
Well, the word being sensitive is what I decline to accept in good faith. Because here is somebody who is going with hernia or having a cancerous situation. And instead of undergoing a surgery, you are saying if they should take a remedial measure, let's begin to have some drugs and all of that, then at the appropriate time. What is the appropriate time?
This surgery had been needed since 2012, but they stopped it. They stopped this surgery from taking place in 2012, saying that Nigerians would face a lot of hardship. But they are doing the same thing now in 2023. So what has changed between now and then that makes them feel that Nigerians can't cope with this surgery?
You need to...
Go ahead,
you need to appreciate this fact that you need to appreciate this fact that at the time we were consuming recently, we were said to be paying subsidy for 60 million liters. But just after this announcement, it's not up to 30 days. It's found out that it's rather 40 and not 60. What happened to the other 20? It's going to neighboring countries that we were subsidizing. And it's still more, more revelation will come from there. And taking this measure is not the issue of postponement of the evil day. You need to do the surgery. No matter depends. The surgery is to preserve the life. The surgery is to make sure that there is an opportunity for the person to recover from the pains. The pains the pains the person is going through in the course of the sickness is more than the temporary pain the person will go through after the post-surgery. Because the post-surgery pains it could be managed. It's within a very short period of time. That's what is going to happen here. For example, the inflow of money from the subsidy withdrawal will be applied into infrastructure. And what are these infrastructures? It behoves the National Assembly to oversight and make sure that these infrastructures are in place and are beneficial to the people. Mr. President has shown sincerity, he has shown transparency, he has shown courage in governance. So all we need to do as citizens is a little patient. I know it's painful. I know what we are all going through. I'm going through the same thing too. But I'm thinking that I want this behemoth, I want this fibroid to be taken away, so that we will be able to have a new breather. We'll be able to have prosperity and growth for our children. Now, if our children are able to go back to school, we will now end up having opportunity where the issues of dropout from school will drop. You will have people who say they cannot pay school fees, they're staying back from school. You still have people, as we speak now, who, of course, are unable to take care of their children. You still have a lot of children who are out of school without jobs. So when we begin to have foreign direct investment as a result of these reforms and opening up of the space? Nigeria, for example, never had export infrastructure to the extent that you cannot export. So those people who were claiming that they were exporters were rather using the dollar from the Central Bank of Nigeria to do round tripping. But now, with the direct foreign investment we are expecting, there's going to be opportunities, there's going to be infrastructure, there's going to be employment. So most of our young people will have opportunity to apply their potentials in consequence to their capacities and values.
Honorable Eyibo, you have talked about the long-term gains.
Very well,
But we have not addressed the issue of the present pain that Nigerians are going through. And we have also not addressed the issue of, you said it's a fibroid that must be removed immediately. I'm wondering, why this fibroid could not have been removed in 2012, why we pushed, the doomsday forward, and then now it is here, and then you're asking us to bear with this government when you were the same party, when the APC was the same party that asked us not to cooperate with the government at that time that wanted to remove this fuel subsidy.
Well, we are not going to the issue of political engineering. We are going into the issue of courage in governance. The previous government lacked the political will, may not have had sufficient vision to undertake this bold decision. But if you read from what Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu have done so far, you will agree with me that he's not just stepping into the government. He is a man who is ready, is in the ring. He prepared his mind psychologically and otherwise for the rings. From his appointments, from his reforms, for his action, and most of those things he has done. There is no doubt about the fact that he's prepared for this business. And the mentality he's coming in that I want all of us to appreciate, it is a value-added mentality, which is a reflection of a man who believes in profit and loss. So that is a mentality of a businessman. He wants Nigerian people to profit and gain from the courage of his conviction and the ability to put whatever he's putting together to benefit an average Nigerian. Now, the short term, you've appreciated the long term, prescriptions. Now, the issue of the short term is the palliative. It's not. This man is not yet. It's not yet 100 days in office. It's just 30 days plus is in office, and the ground is running. The National Assembly is resuming tomorrow. The Senate is resuming tomorrow. So let's wait and see robust and constructive activities that will be able to throw up the issue of palliatives and various interventions. But I have no doubt in my mind that there are going to be a lot of interventions that will be beneficial to average Nigerian. I can tell you that for truth. I'm not a spokesperson of government, but I've studied the psychology, I've studied the sociology put together of the government's intention, and of course the intention of democracy when it brought together the legislature, executive, and judiciary for the people. So the empowerment of this particular government with its sovereignty by the Nigerian people is not misplaced, I can tell you.
Well, Eseme Eyibo, former House of Reps member, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon.
I really appreciate
this conversation. We appreciate it as well.